Good afternoon and welcome to Sihasin Hour. Thank you for joining us today. The Navajo and Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund was on just a little bit of a break for the past 2 weeks, so we hadn't had Sihasin Hour, but here we are and we're back, and we're glad to have a special guest with us today. Our guest is Jaynie Parrish. And today we're going to talk about getting out the vote, which is very important. As Native Americans and as tribal people, our voice is often represented in our vote. Here on the Navajo Nation, more recently, we have had a primary election. And in that primary election, we sent two candidates to the general election. And that's really important, too, for us to be able to support what candidate we feel represents our views. A lot of people have gotten to the polls, and a lot of people turned out to vote for two candidates, and that's really awesome. Some people might have the frame of mind that voting doesn't do much. However, I believe that as we participate in this system, and we send people and we send our voices to the polls, we're able to represent the issues that are important to us, and we're able to take a stand on issues that we might feel affect us adversely. So our guest today, as I had stated, is Jaynie Parrish. Jaynie Parrish is Dene. She is from the Navajo Nation, grew up in Window Rock and Kayenta. Since 2011, she's been helping progressive groups be more inclusive by training and hiring Native people in political and issue advocacy spaces so that they can lead and represent their communities. And this is very important, I believe, because we need tribal people to reach out to our tribal members and teach them about how they can advocate on behalf of themselves to have our voices be heard at the polls. So my name is Mahayo Manus. I'm the public relations director here at Yeha Nido, and so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over and let Jaynie introduce herself. And Jaynie does have a slideshow, so I'm going to let you kind of go through that. But right now, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for an introduction.
Good morning, Aunt Ebene. Thank you for having me. Jaynie Parrish Shincha, the Bethlehem Nashla, Ashi, Bashishin, Na Kaidne, the She, the Torajini, that Dana Torajini are my grandparents. Sorry, I still get tripped up every now and again because I don't always practice as much as I should. I know that's not a very good Navajo thing to do, but
No
I
problem.
do my best. I am not a fluent speaker, but I did grow up in Window Rock and Navajo communities. My parents are fluent speakers, and like many of our families, they grew up with the boarding school eras, but also not teaching us. So it is left up to us to try to have to learn on our own. But I am so excited to be joining you all today to talk about being more civically involved and being more civically informed. And it's what I love to do. And it's what I've been doing since 2011. I'm not sure if I just want to go ahead and get into of maybe how I got involved, or is there some additional question? Okay,
That's fine. Yeah, let's
great.
go ahead and jump into your how you became
All
involved.
right. Sure. Well, I was like a lot of folks out there, especially young folks. I was not registered to vote right at 18. I didn't even cast my first vote until I was in my late 20s. I didn't even get registered till that point. However, that doesn't mean that I wasn't involved in community. I was very much involved learning a lot about our history as people and colonization, and I took American Indian Justice Studies and a little bit in high school, but mostly in college at ASU, where I went to school for my undergrad, and got activated and was involved quite a bit. I was just getting my feet wet. Many of us rallied against the English only laws that were being pressed at that time. So I would say that was probably one of my first rallies I had attended and helped organize as a student. And we gathered speakers, and it was a wonderful learning ground. And as student clubs, we just got more involved in things like that. And we organized to get our students out, to get them involved on anything, whether it was being more involved in STEM or more social justice issues. And when you're that young and you have that energy, you're learning a lot. The thing was, I didn't know quite where I was going to go after undergrad. I knew I was going to, I'm glad I even knew I was going to go to college. I'm the first in my family to go to college. I'm a first gen student. I just knew I needed to go. My dad, my mom weren't able to, but they always encouraged me to go and to learn. And so I thought I was going to be in social services, really, because I wanted to break cycles. I mean, whose family isn't impacted by substance abuse or some kind of heinous trauma in our family that we have to get over and get through and work through and heal from? And so I was going to go and help with substance abuse or something along those lines, maybe family care. And sorry, I'm outside in Chinle. If you hear noises, I apologize. But, I thought I was going to go that route, but I ended up going a little bit different route and finding politics and campaigns and community organizing in graduate school. I mean, I didn't know that's what it was called, and that's what I was doing as an undergrad, but I knew that was what I wanted to do more of. And knowing that I had a lot of knowledge already about why things are the way they are, why we have these injustices, why we have the lack of, but I also knew we were very powerful people. I knew we came from strong community and strong cultures, and I knew the history of why things became the way they were, politically and some other realms of our society. So I started putting my energy into education, and I thought I would go that route, become a dean or a professor and do that. I worked at ASU for over 8 years. However, something pulled me to Harvard, and I was really excited to go to graduate school to the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. And my world opened up even more. 60% of my classmates were international, and I loved it so much. I learned from a lot of good people. And when I took this class from Marshall Gantz and many others like him, they were talking about community change and organizing and what that means. And it all brought it back full circle to when I was that 18-year-old kid organizing and rallying back at Arizona State University, but even further back. So I was like, this is cool. I want to do this. And he and others did a really great job to connecting all of that together for me. And I started finding a really great passion to get people more civically educated, involved for real community change. And so that's what I started doing. My first job was with Rock the Vote, where I registered people to vote. It was the first year former President Obama was then running. And that got me activated, and I got excited, and I got to see how we as Native people really have a lot to give. And so that's my starting roots of being civically more engaged and registering people to vote and getting information out there for voter education. And I've been involved since then. So now what are we doing? Let me go ahead and show some of my slides so I can
Definitely.
stay on track with some of the talking points.
Great.
So I can share these with you. It just shows a little bit more of my background, some of the groups I'm affiliated with, and then of course my family and my clan. So my last clan was Funatini Dashanella. So I got that one. And I'm very proud of my family. They're like everybody else. they are what fuels me. My mom, my dad, their stories, their history,
Mhm.
and of course the current and the future of our family and our community, is so that we can always be better and improve our state and improve our situation and our conditions, and always moving positively forward. At least that's what I try. You know, we have a lot of barriers and impediments in our lives, personally, professionally, and we always have to keep moving forward. And so I think that our teachings, right, they tell us that. And so for me, how the call to action was, what was I going to do to help my community and my family? And my role was with voter education and civic involvement. And so we know the power of Indigenous voters. We didn't always know that. You know, we have only recently had more and more Indigenous people running for office and winning. I mean, our historic turnout in 2020 is the reason why we have Deb Haaland as the Secretary of Interior. It's the reason why we have Peggy Flanagan as Lieutenant Governor in Minnesota, and Sharice Davids in Congress, and so many more folks like that that are actively involved and have been for years. And
Mhm.
so now, how do we connect that political piece to what is actually happening in our communities to make change? That's always the part where people aren't quite sure how to make the connection. And for me, it starts with voting. You know, today is the first day of early voting for our state, October 12th, and it's for the state and federal elections. But you know, I didn't grow up knowing all of this. Like I said, I was very unaware of registering to vote, how to vote. I didn't know about counties. I didn't know about legislative districts, congressional. I barely even knew anything about the elected candidates or people running or offices. I just, you know, we covered it in school, but you don't really have a connection to it
Yeah.
until you finally get involved and meet people.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, this is where a lot of the concentration, and we got to see in 2020, and I don't know if many of you were attuned to political news in 2020, but you know, reporter Shundeen Harrison tweeted this photo, which was simply the map of tribal lands and voter turnout numbers that were coming in on election night, and it went viral. It was showing the power of Indigenous voters turning out, packing a lot of punch in certain communities, flexing their political muscle. And it was really incredible, good sight to see.
Mhm.
Also, we know that we are invisible in many spaces, and politics is definitely one of them as well, but we're growing. And folks didn't know what to call voter turnout, and they ended up calling us something else, right? They didn't know
Oh,
how
yeah.
to frame Native voters. And so
That's right.
this is our challenge, is right, is overcoming the invisibility and making sure that we have a voice. And that's really what it comes down to for me in voting and being civically involved, is if I want to make a difference in my community with climate, with water rights, with anything, if I want more roads, if I want to get more anything,
Mm.
how do I start? Where do I start? Who makes the decisions? Where does the funding come from? How can I have a say that my community gets uh, a rehab center or a library? It all
Mhm.
comes back to our governance, whether that's tribal, state, and federal. And there are people in these positions that make those policies, that make those laws, that that vote on money,
Mhm.
all of that stuff.
Definitely.
And that's how I connect it. And so if I
Mhm.
want to do something like that, I have to learn, and I have to talk to my electeds, and I have to talk to my community and members about it. Like,
Mhm.
how is my vote tied to this policy or this law or this person that I'm going to choose to advocate for me and my community to ensure that we get the funding for this rehab center or
Mhm.
for this road or infrastructure? that for me, a lot of when I was young, I didn't have a lot of that connection.
Mhm.
I was angry. I was angry about all the BS our communities have gone through for generations. I've learned, I went through all the emotions. When you learn about the long walk, when you learn about the injustices, when you learn about all of the atrocities, you
Mhm.
go through it. And then what do you do with it? Where do you take that to put the energy into a good space and keep fighting?
Well, Jenny, let me ask you really quickly, on this note, as you talked about advocating for particular issues, and being out with your community, within your community, the Navajo community, do you find that in those interactions you're met with people who are supportive, empathetic, apathetic? What have been some of your experiences in terms of just engaging with tribal people, our people, to support an issue?
Right. Well, for example, we had a petition signing recently. It ended, but they were advocating for public school funding, and the majority of our schools on tribal lands are public schools. And so when we had to figure out a way to work with partners and folks, and it was all a nonpartisan effort, but we had to educate folks like why we all know why our schools need more funding. I don't think that's an issue, but it's connecting folks to how do we get that funding, and what is this proposition going to do? What is this initiative? So I think once we are, like myself, but also organizers, took the time to just connect, introduce ourselves, but also that we really care about education, and we have kids and grandkids in school. We were students once,
Yeah.
and our poor teachers, right, what they've gone through as well. And I think that once we get to that point of the realness, a lot more people have open ears. But
Hmm.
it's getting to that point. That's the critical part. There
Hmm.
are people that are just very quickly, oh, I don't know, I don't want to, I don't vote. They're very apathetic and they don't
Yeah.
care, or sometimes very hostile, sometimes not. Some people are
Mhm.
very nice. It just
Yeah.
depends on the person and what they're going through that day or that time. Maybe they were
Sure.
really let down by
Hmm.
their elected leaders or something. So we have to really be mindful of what that person is coming with. And sometimes they just don't understand.
Hmm.
And maybe they're influenced by the harshness sometimes of politics. And that's true. A lot turns a lot of people off. But we
Hmm.
have to remember, I think when our team, when we talk, we have to remember about the issue. It's not
Sure.
about the necessarily the candidate. It's not necessarily about the party at all, or parties. It's really about the issue and our communities and our people.
Hmm.
So we have to kind of remind people that. So yeah, there are a lot of people
Hmm.
who are activated that I found. They're
Hmm.
really excited and passionate and are in the know and informed. Others opposite. And then there's a lot of people in the middle. So I think with our
Hmm.
petition signing, though, we got a lot of good people interested and helped out.
Awesome, awesome. And I don't want to detract from your slideshow. We'll get back to
Sure.
where we were there, but I think the things that you had mentioned about funding for education and how uh, our voices are heard, and funding is impacted, to our reservation schools or our local schools, is something that's super important. I think as we had went through the pandemic within the past 2 years, a lot of issues really came to the surface in terms of resources that we need within our education system. Our broadband, our connectivity really needs to be improved. When a lot of education and school went remote, all the kids had to connect through the Wi-Fi, and some people don't have those resources available to them. Some of our kids had to, even be have to go to the chapter houses. They would have to set up hotspot areas for children to come so that they could, tap into their curriculum and their syllabus. So there's so many issues that are important that affect us, that if we don't listen and think about, certain ballots that we need to be voting on, that we pass by, that type of funding just passes us by, and we need it. And that's just one area. There's quite a few areas, but I think as Native people, and as we look at our education and how it impacts our future generations and our kids and our students, we need to be in tune with what's going on in terms of the elections. So I just thought I'd share that real quick.
Oh,
But yeah,
absolutely.
if you want to
No, I
go ahead,
mean,
yeah.
you cover some great points. Yeah, you cover some great points, because I know with Navajo Hopi Cobra is a great example of community organizing from grassroots. There's a need in the community, there's challenges, people
Mhm.
pull together to answer that and to help
Yeah.
solve problems, or try their best anyway. They're not going to solve everything in the world, but you're going to at least attempt to try and make things better. And so that's exactly how we use voting and civic education, is to bring about those positive changes.
Mhm.
Um, because you're right, we have so many needs, because we're still younger tribal nation, we have to rebuild, right? You've
Mhm.
heard many speakers before said we've had robust governments in the way that we governed ourselves before the United States. We're having to deal with hundreds of years of dismantling who we are, and we're building all of that back. A lot of communities lost a lot of it. Our community, thankfully, a Navajo Nation, Hopi, and many others have a lot of strong connection to what it means to govern. What is the democracy? How do we lead our people? How do we help one another in our community? And we have those concepts. And it's just, now when we relate it to the state or the county or the federal, even
Mhm.
our own tribal government, that's what we have to rebuild, and how we have to get involved now, because that's the system that's laid out. It doesn't mean we have to keep the system that's
Mhm.
laid out. We can change it, but we have to get involved. If we don't
Definitely.
like it, that's how we make those changes, is in our involvement and becoming more informed.
Mhm.
So I think that you're right in that, and then that comes the funding, and that
Mhm.
comes the representation, and then
Mhm.
that comes the visibility and our political power.
Mhm.
Because if someone or a group is trying to harm or take away voting rights, or harm and blocking us from, I don't know, you name it, from improving our communities,
Mhm.
we have that power collectively, if we do it collectively and organize, to overcome that,
Mhm.
and win, essentially. And that's what our ancestors have shown
Mhm.
us for generations, right? Annie Wanika, even before her.
Mhm.
I mean, I always think about our leaders when they were in Fort Sumner.
Mhm.
What did they have to do, to plan, to think, to organize, to get us out of there and to
Mhm.
get us back home and
Mhm. Definitely.
rebuild, you
Definitely.
know?
Definitely.
So that's what it doesn't just stop here in 20, or start in 2022. It goes
Yeah.
all the way back.
Yeah. And yeah, just I
So
mean,
sorry, I always get emotional at that part.
that's awesome, because we have to think about where we came from to get to where we are today. We had a show just recently on Indigenous Peoples Day, and we talked about resilience and resiliency, and how,
Yeah,
we identify with those terms in terms of our history relating to it. But more often, as we look at it, it's enduring, it's endurance, it's how
it should fuel us.
yeah, it's how we've withstood everything that's been placed upon us. And Hueldi, the long walk, those are things that our ancestors endured to bring us back to where we are today. And so as those things relate to um, the elections, that's kind of another piece of how we interact politically with our own government. and with the county, with the state, with the federal. I mean, and you're saying, sometimes people don't agree with the systems that are in place. Uh, but currently how we interact with those systems definitely has an impact on our livelihood. So those are things that we need to always be aware of as well. If we don't agree with it, then before we can't just change it overnight. And that sometimes people don't want to subscribe to the systematic types of processes, but I mean, as it stands, we have to interact with them. Anyways, were there any other aspects of your
Yes.
slideshow that you wanted to kind of go back to? Let's go ahead and go back.
Sure. Yeah, I want to get
Mhm.
wonderful. I want to go ahead and get out some information,
Sure.
important deadlines and what to know about this upcoming election.
Thanks.
Um, but really, again, today is the first day of voting for state and federal elections. I come across a lot of folks who don't know still the distinction between tribal elections and state and federal, or they only think in terms of tribal, which is fine. But we as citizens have responsibilities not only to the tribe, but to our state and of course the rest of the country. So we always have to remember that. And Navajo Nation is the only tribe that I think I might be misquoting here, but we're the only ones that align our tribal elections with the rest of the state and federal elections.
Mhm.
So some things that you should know in terms of voting. There's plenty of good resources out there, especially coming directly from the Secretary of State, ASU, Indian Legal Protection Program, many wonderful groups, even you all are putting out some information from Arizona Native Vote. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit organization, brand new, but we are letting people know and assisting voters with trying to vote early. We're advocating and encouraging them to get out and vote early. Ballots have been in the mail. So people who prefer to vote by mail, they are in the mail. So they'll be getting it soon. And there are a variety of ways they can return them. They can return them at a local drop box that's close to them. They can return it by mail. They can or go in person to a voting center or their polling place and drop off their ballot. And if they don't have their mail-in ballot, they could just go in person to an early voting location and vote traditionally, old school, pen and paper in your ballot. You could do it that way. So we have a good amount of time to get people to vote, and we are so advocating for people to do this earlier because we never know what we have to plan for on general election day, November 8th. So you can go to my.arizona.vote. You can check on your status of your ballot there. You can find a polling location or a voting center if you have access to online. If you do not have reliable access to online, please help your family members and friends by letting them know they can call their county recorder's office, or we're also letting people know that you should help your relatives. It's not hard to sit down by your relatives that don't have the internet and just say, hey, do you know about voting? And then you can help them on your phone. That's how we help each other, right? Especially, I know my mom has nothing to do with the phone or the internet, but when I'm on the phone with her, I can check, or when I'm actually physically with her, I can check. So these are the ways that we can help each other out, family and friend wise. But those are some important things to know going forward. I have a slide for the dates as well. And so I want to just
Okay,
get
awesome.
that. I just want to get that covered before we move on to any other things.
Okay, just real quick,
But these are sure.
you did say
Go ahead.
my.arizona.vote. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
my.arizona.vote. It's meant
Okay.
for the phone.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of cool things that the Secretary of State's office has done to make
Okay.
it easier to navigate.
Awesome.
And then here are legislative districts. If you don't know, this is our counties. So we work in Navajo County, Apache County, and Coconino County. So we work a lot with Navajo Nation, White Mountain Apache voters, Hopi, and sometimes San Carlos voters. We also inform people about their districts. Like I said, I had no idea what my state or legislative congressional district was. And we have maps to help people learn about what our districts are and why they're important and what's the purpose of them, first of all. And then, of course, we let people know about the different counties and the way that they vote, because Navajo Nation and other tribes, our lands go into other counties. And so sometimes there are different rules for each county. So for example, our county right now in Apache County, you have to go into polling places. In Navajo County, you have voting centers, but you also have polling places. So this is slides needs to be updated, meaning you can go anywhere in your county and vote. But in Apache County, you have to go to your specific polling place. But in Navajo County, you can go to any voting center throughout the county and vote or drop off your ballot. Same thing with Coconino County. So they call that hybrids, meaning that they have both. So voters have more options in those type of hybrid groups. But just so you know that wherever you are registered to vote, you should know your options for voting. Also, these are important deadlines. Again, what the one important deadline coming up is October 28th. So if you want to request a ballot by mail, you still have time. But that's the deadline for the November 8th general election. And remember, you can't wait till the last day, because we have to remember about our mailing voting system in our counties. Our mail sometimes has to go all the way to Albuquerque and then come back, or other locations. So we have to give a few days for these things to get to where we need them to. So make a plan to vote. Everyone's saying make a plan. Think about your distance, think about your travel. Where are you going to be? So that's why I'm such a strong advocate for voting early, because I want to have fun on November 8th. I want to eat mutton stew and hang out at the chapter house and visit. I don't want to have to worry about my voting or my ballot. So I do it right when I get it in the mail, and I drop it off at my drop box or my polling place. But I know, and so I still get to visit on election day. I just don't have to worry about, oh, I have to get this in and make the deadline, or I have to take time off of work to do it, or I have to find childcare, or whatever comes up. You never know. So those are just some important things I want people to be aware of. Yes. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome,
those are some
awesome.
things to start.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just I was copying and pasting some of those links into our comment section so people can check their registration status, etc. But as we kind of move forward here, maybe you could talk about just a little bit, and you have, but maybe what strength do we have in terms of the native vote? I know that you also talked about there's obstacles that are placed before us in terms of getting to the polls, but what about things like redistricting? How are those impacting the native votes currently in this election season?
Sure. So I hope you guys got to see my slides. I was talking, but I hope you saw my slides while I was going through them. If not, I apologize, and we'll make sure you get a copy of the slides that I was going through, the dates and the differences between the counties voting. But the power of our vote is growing, and it's exciting, because even though we are a smaller population, and we know why we're smaller population, but we can pack a lot of punch. And that's the most incredible thing. Whatever side you're on, politic wise, or whatever ballot initiatives you really are passionate about, this is the time to do it. Because unfortunately, the data has shown that not a lot of people turn out in the midterms. And what that means is, where the midterms are in the middle between presidential election cycles. So we vote for the presidential election every 4 years. Everybody gets excited. However, the midterms are just 2 years before that. And for our state of Arizona, we have so many offices that are up, from governor Secretary of State, Attorney General, all the way down ballot. Very important offices. Some people would argue this election is a lot more important sometimes in many ways than the presidential, because these leaders that are going to be leading us have a lot to say about our state laws, and how they interact with our tribal communities. So we want people there that know about tribes. We want people in there that know about our policies, our laws, respects tribal sovereignty, and more. And we don't want someone that's going to ignore us. We need people that are going to stand with our communities, so we can work together. But this midterm elections is really important for so many races. We're going to have a very long ballot. There are also there are a lot of ballot initiatives. And so what's the challenges? What's the problems with all this stuff? For me, I'm very passionate about voting rights. Our people, as many may know, we're the last to get the right to vote. We were also the last to be citizens, all of this in our own country. There have been many barriers. It's no secret, right, that we've been at the butt end of inequity, of injustice, of so much discrimination and racism, and been kept down. There's a reason for all of that. And so same thing, forces are working right now, have always been working to take away and suppress our vote, because Black and brown communities have been rising, are more vocal, and there's certain people that are afraid of that. And so they will gerrymander with redistricting, meaning make it more favorable for them and their candidates. Will block out certain communities from voting, make it more harder. They'll pass certain laws to make it just a little bit more difficult, because we know how it is with paperwork. And if I have to travel all the way over to St. John's or over here, and then this, or they don't have my ID, and you get frustrated, right? We just get frustrated when we go to the bank and we don't have something right. Think about voting. And then you have all these things that you have to think about. And if something goes wrong, they don't make it easy. Voting should be easy. You should be able to vote on this, register the same day that you vote. You should be able to vote anywhere. But there's a lot of rules that have been put in place for 20 plus years. So we have to overcome them. And we have. Native voters, we've showed that. We still turn out, even though we have a lot against us: transportation, distance, language, a lot. We still show up. So for me, there's always a long list. Even before we were born, there was a long list. But this is why, we have to be aware of it and plan. And I always like to talk about voting, because there's certain people who are working who don't want us to vote. It's just simple as that. But we overcome a lot. And that was shown because, yes, colonization did a number on us since 500 plus years. But you know what? Like the Alaskan Natives always say, we have a 10,000 plus year history in our lands. This 500 years done a lot of wreaking havoc, but it's only 500 years in our 10,000 plus year history. We are a lot stronger than this 500 years. So when it comes to overcoming, when it comes to fighting and standing up and never giving up, we as Indigenous people are exemplary people in doing that. And we keep showing up and we keep doing it, because that's who we are. Our ancestors didn't give up. Our grandparents didn't give up. Our parents aren't giving up. We're the next generation to carry that baton and continue to fight for things like voting rights, continue to fight for water rights, all of the things that they fought for. It's our turn to step up and carry that.
Awesome.
And we do that with voting.
Definitely.
And other things, but voting.
Yeah, I'm glad that you put it that way, because definitely as we look at our histories too, our tribal people gained a consensus in terms of how they decided to do things. and maybe those might not, people might not directly correlate those things with the vote, but there was a way that they gained consensus within their groups, within their clans, within their areas to move on things. And so here we are, and in 2022, and there's a different way that we're doing it, but it's a way that we're letting our voices be heard. So we need, it's important. It definitely stays important for us to be able to turn out at the polls. Some of the things that maybe you could talk just a little bit about, some of the things you've done with let me see here just really quickly, with the Arizona Native vote. Just
How do we get out the vote?
yeah, how do we
Yeah,
get out the vote? What have you guys been doing, up to the voter registration deadline? And then what are you doing kind of here forward
sure.
to the elections?
Thank you. Well, there's a lot that goes on in the background. So I didn't know a lot about campaign or strategy or politics and like again, or issues and advocacy until I started getting involved, and you learn on the job. So you start with a strategy and a plan. Who are our voters? Where are they located? What are the deadlines? What is the best way to communicate and get a hold of people? We know the digital divide, but we have to try to get in front of people as much as possible. And we've been doing this for several months now. So letting people know voter education, what's going on is usually the biggest thing, and communicate. Not a lot of people know what's happening. Excuse me, not a lot of people know what's happening. So they have to be aware of deadlines, of races, of how to register, where to register, all of the basic stuff. And then you figure out a plan of how to reach them. Can we call them? Can we text them? Can we email them? Social media is great, but we all know person to person is always more valuable than all those others, meaning you use them together. Not that it's the only way. You have to use all of your tools in your tool bag to reach people. So for us, what we found is our local organizers is always the best way to reach people in our communities, because people can see them, they can talk to them. If they speak Navajo or Hopi or Apache, they have someone there. Again, digital divide, we can't just say go online all the time, even though we do. It's for people who have the option, people who can go online, that's great. But we have a lot of people who can't. So that's the value of having a real person from your own community to help you. And so we have organizers stationed in different communities. They work in their communities. They go door to door if they need to. They can pick up the phone call, talk in our own languages, meet you at the flea market, at the post office. I mean, it's real tangible stuff, and that's good. And so also we have postcards for a lot of people who don't have phone numbers, or people who change phone numbers every month. I know some people who do that. We try to reach them by mail. And so there are newsletters, there's postcards, and a lot of folks will start getting some of that. But we have to figure out a way to especially reach high potential voters, meaning how can we target the people that are not, that don't vote frequently? And then people that have never been registered or never voted, those are people that we need to reach. People that are good voters, that have good voting habits already, that have been doing it for generations. We communicate with them, but a lot of our focus is on those people that are infrequent voters. Maybe they voted 10 years ago, maybe they voted a few years ago, but where are they now? So we have to get those people out to vote and turn them out. And so there's a lot of ways that we do that, and you have to be present year round. Our organization, it's brand new, but we know that being present year round in our communities is essential for organizing and essential for voter turnout. And not just for voting, but to help the community. Some of our community members are passionate about helping domestic violence shelters, helping community cleanup. So folks do a combination of voter education and civic engagement, but also just community mutual aid and services. So it's like, we're not going anywhere. We live here and we want to improve it. So we'd like for you to come along with us. That's essentially some of the tactics that we do. we're hoping to get into the school soon to talk
Uh-huh.
about voting rights and why voting is cool. I didn't
Cool.
just say that. Oh my God, I sound so nerdy.
Voting is cool.
I'm the anti-power.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Jaynie, I'm just wondering, are there any resources available for our Navajo speaking elders? You know, are there ways that they might be able to kind of tap into any information they might need in terms of people, you know, translating for them or just talking to them through any resources you might have through Arizona Native Vote or otherwise?
I do. I
Mm.
do. And I will provide a list, but there are several great places. So I always go to the
Okay.
county, refer people to the county election office.
Okay.
Our folks in those county election offices, Native folks who've been working, have done a great job in Apache County, Navajo County, and Coconino County to make sure that they reached Native voters. So they
Mhm.
have people there on staff. However, they're going to be busy.
Mhm.
So there are going to be other organizations like ours, Arizona Native Vote. We have several speakers that can help you, and I can provide a list of names and phone numbers for them. But for example, in Winter Rock, in White Mountain, White River, Hopi, and of course in Chinle and a few other places. But
Mhm.
we are so
Okay.
thankful for our language speakers. We
Okay.
have some young language speakers too. So I'm going to meet her today and I can't wait. But so there's us as Arizona Native Vote, county election offices. There's other nonpartisan nonprofit organizations as well that
Mhm.
are trying to recruit. So I'm not sure where they are, but
Mhm.
for example, Arizona State University's Indian Legal Program, Election Protection Program,
Mhm.
they usually have language speakers to help voters on election day who experience any challenges at the booth.
Okay.
So there's them, and I'm not sure if Protect a Sacred has any language speakers, but I would recommend some of those groups for sure.
Okay, yeah, and I'll look some of those up and I'll put them in our comments section. And I know that I've put some of the links that you had sent earlier into our comment section, and as well as a link for Arizona Native
Okay.
Vote for people to refer to. But
Yeah.
yeah, Jaynie is there in my hometown, Chinle, and if you look at my background, it is Spider Rock. And so it's nice that you joined us today. I'm very thankful for the time. She's joining us from outdoors. You can kind of see that she's on the scene there today. And I know she has a meeting coming up right at 1 o'clock. So we're gonna cut this one short just so that we make sure that we're respectful of her time. But before we go, Jaynie, any last words that you might want to give our Navajo voters, or just kind of let us know of anything else we might want to look forward to as we approach these general or these next elections?
Get excited. It is exciting. Find a way to get involved. Join our organization or another. If you are a language speaker, you know what? Everybody's looking for you and they will pay you.
Mhm.
If you want to help your family members get in more information, reach out to us. But get excited because we are powerful people.
Mhm.
Our voting blocks are powerful, and we need to come together, not just this election year, but always for things.
Mhm.
And we show that with this great organization,
Mhm.
you know, Hopi COVID, Navajo Hopi COVID Relief. It's incredible. And we
Mhm.
could do that collectively again in other things. And so get excited, get involved, and just always remember we are power. We are power and we can get things done. I heard Peggy Flanagan years ago, and I was like 20, and I first heard the words, "Nothing about us without us." She was one of my trainers, and ever since then, now I'm hearing it everywhere in the political realm, and I'm so excited for that. But remember that, nothing about us without us. We have to find our ways in, no matter what it is you're looking
Mhm.
for to change. Just get involved. So
Oh, that's a
that's what
great
I want to
statement.
say. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's a great statement. And we're going to go ahead and wrap this up, you guys. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Jaynie, for joining us today. And next week we will have Emily Allison joining us, and we're going to talk about some issues that relate to Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So please join us next week, same time, same place. And again, thank you, Jaynie, and we'll catch you soon, maybe out on the election trail here. So have a great day. Hagoane.